This piece is sitting in this United States Pavilion, which is what I've been told is neoclassical architecture. I'm not well versed in architecture, but it's eerily plantation-like, very much not a form that brings me joy. But then we have this piece sitting here, and it's almost as if an alien ship has landed in this. It's totally opposite, totally contrasts the way this space is set up.
In this moment, if I sit here and take a nap, or I look up with my back to the audience, to sit and be safe and look up and think about the future, like that's not a bodily gesture that my country has said I have the right to. I would be arrested, or I would be killed, or I'd be stared at the least, right? Like that's not something I can do without having to think about it. And so to offer that, I think is kind of an ultimate spatial gesture.
This isn't by happenstance that we're in this particular corner of the pavilion. It's not by happenstance that we're actually reaching up and touching the building in a certain way. It's not by happenstance that we're tilted and angled at different ways, right? These are all design decisions that we're making that really get at this idea of in-betweenness and the liminal space, right? The spaces that folks who are sort of fleeing from oppression or coping with oppression find these and carve out these spaces for themselves to actually survive. And this idea of Thrival Geographies is really thinking about a blending of rival geography, which is a way of kind of having an oppositional geography to the existing power structure, right? And so where existing power structures may want to constrict certain people, the rival geography sort of works against the grain of that, right? So for us, kind of bringing those two terms together became the basis for our title of our piece, but also our way of thinking about this project.
I'm not a braid historian. I'm a craftsman. I have a lot of years of experience braiding. And I'm an artist, so I like to make artful braids and take braiding to the next level as much as I can in my own work. I'm always trying to push it a little bit further. When I think about this, I'm mostly thinking about Black women that have to exist in corporate America and they have to wear their hair straight in order to make white people feel comfortable. All of these styles, I spent time creating them and I had to take them down afterward. And I always expected to do that because people have to go to work and they can't go to work looking like that. Not because it's not beautiful, but just because it's unacceptable. So, I just, although it's healthier for a lot of Black women to wear their hair natural or to braid it to protect it, you're told that that's unacceptable. So in order to have a job, you have to do things that are unhealthy for yourself, you know, things that are against what you know is good for you. When it has nothing to do with your ability to do the job, it's just the way you look. You have to submit to other people's ideas of how you should look. And I fear that if I'm in Europe doing this, for people that will be specifically at the Architectural Biennale, you know, will they be able to understand?
What I like about Shani's work is that she's using the scalp as a foundation and the hair as a structure. But I think that is a lot of that, right? It's like that how you're making form and shaping space with hair. And I think we want to make sure we kind of continue that, right? So that it's not just decoration, but it's actually like, how does this make sense for our concept, but also the spaces that we're trying to form?
Right, so this isn't just a hairstyle, right? It is, but it also is like an extension of an identity, or it differentiates itself from the next country or the next town or the next group or the age, generational, or all kinds of things, right? Like this is almost like a loom. Like if we could magically cut away the frame, that thing could potentially stand on its own. And so I think that's also the pushback to our architectural community, to be like, this isn't the extra thing, this is not the decorative thing in the way that they want it to be. Somehow we've let reign this idea that structure and form rules, and it pervades in the way architecture is disseminated in most major Western institutions, right? And so there's a way in which we're trying to assert with our experimentation with this, that this is a way of making architecture.
I don't see these things as being so different. I guess because you all are architects, you're thinking about it in a different way than I am, but I think if we're making Black space, I always say that, especially for Black women, like decorating yourself and your hair is a part of our innate Africanness, I think. Like in making the space, you're allowing yourself to decorate yourself as you would naturally.
You're talking about a social cultural space that and we're talking about the intersection between the social cultural space and the physical space coming together. So what you said is dead on. It's like it's right there, and that's where these things keep getting braided.
Right, but I like Shani's comment too, because it does bring it back and not apologizing for that. No, that braiding is decoration too. It's like an assertion of an identity, and it's a claiming of a conceptual space. This stands up against any parametrics, 3D printing. It has the same kind of connection and resonance. It really does start to suggest like a whole nother way of tectonic, right? And all from embracing or allowing a conversation that's native to our own experiences. We're bringing another language, not just in terms of the subject matter, but also the materiality. Like, we really try to press the envelope about what could a future kind of understanding of architecture be. We've been quite symmetrical in how we thought about it, and we made that decision to really skew the fringe to one side, like all these braided techniques, and then it really just became jazz. Like it went from our architectural brain to our artistic brain, or however you want to describe it, like really just shifting from what's right to like, how does it feel? And to let the object kind of direct that. So I feel like that's really what happened.
What's up? What's up? Who that hiding? How you doing, miss? Can you see everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking at this thing, and the function of the rail is just to emphasize the recliner.
Okay.
And almost like the rails or the coverage of the rails looks like it's holding the body up. So I'm not paying attention to the rails anymore.
Okay, she's gonna illustrate this line for you.
Okay, perfect.
So below this line, you see that being filled in, and then above the line, you see it being open.
If there's a concern that there's too many languages, that pulls some of the language of what's happening on the pod onto the rails.
All right, cool. Yeah, well, I think we're in good shape.
There are things that people will see in our installation that remind them of things that are familiar, whether that's an African dwelling, maybe it's a sort of cording pattern you might see on a braided whip, or maybe it's the idea of like a beehive hairdo or updo, right, in terms of braids in African American culture. I think there are things that are familiar to people, but for us, it's conceptually, it's like a living organism, and that is something that is not static. The fringing and some of the things that we have are meant to be braided, rebraided, that there are people who come to activate it, that actually being inside of it, having a seat and having that moment to be in the space. I think that's the sort of hiding in plain sight, right? That comes from one of our muses, Harriet Jacobs, who hid in a small, what she called the garret space. And so she lived there for 7 years in a really tight space, but she was there. So she actually had escaped slavery and come back into slavery, but found freedom within this confined space. And so for us, I think thinking about all of these different layers is something that is really important to us.
I hope that people challenge the notion that one way of doing things is the best way, and one way of doing things is not superior to any other way. There are so many other cultures that have made structures and things for years that have sustained them, that match their lifestyle, that are functional to them. I put a lot of care into the work that I do, just like designers put a lot of care into the work that they do when they design buildings, when they use the programs that they use. So it's not about one being better than the other, it's about the effort kind of being the same, and them both being totally valid.
I think in our quest to be participatory, we were so fixated on the technique and the tectonic. And Shani's been such an incredible collaborator and so advanced without realizing it that we almost lost sight of the fact that she represents the citizen in this very real way that we've been talking about Black women as a demographic. At once, she's like an advanced artistic partner who actually has a lot of kind of architectural understanding, and then at the same time, she's just this Black lady who braids hair on the South Side, right? And so that is the welcoming in of that everyday citizen, and also expands the idea of participatory, and I couldn't be happier, right? Because then there's an ownership of this in a way that's very different than the way the profession definitely tends to think about it, right? There's no crediting. You don't get that sense of like you know that one hand didn't make this.
And yeah, it might not be your aesthetic. It's a totally like wild piece. I feel that a lot of people will be kind of challenged by it and not really know how to feel about it. Sometimes when I look at it, I'm trying to figure out how I feel about it. But honestly, I feel good, and I feel secure in the fact that I know how much work we put into this, and I know where we were coming from when we created it, and I know that it's anomalous that we're here. So I do find the privilege in me being here, and I am holding myself accountable because we are representing Black people to a large degree, Black women especially. For the performance piece, I really thought critically about citizenship and how it relates to Black people. And during the slave trade, there was a lot of research conducted in order to support the notion that Black people were not human beings. I found one piece that said Black people are incapable of taking care of themselves, and that's what makes a citizen. That research also made me think about an Audre Lorde quote that says, taking care of myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So I'm using that as an anchor for my piece, and I'm going to radically take care of myself in front of an audience. We have Black women and a Black man creating Black woman space inside of the U.S. Pavilion, which looks like a plantation. The whole thing is just mind-blowing. It's a lot of levels of really weird juxtaposing ideas that somehow make sense only because we are here to narrate for ourselves.
We're welcoming the conversation of what could be when these two things literally, when they meet. That's the next, right? When they connect finally, and it's not adversarial, it's not erasure. It's actually confrontation, and then what's the thrival? What's on the other side of this?